What's up, guys? It's Areeb Yasir back here on YouTube finally, and I thought it's very important today we talk about what's happening in the world and why you really need to pay attention more than you ever have. So we all know what's happened with Nicolas Maduro, how his country was invaded, and how he's abducted along with his wife and taken to the United States. Well, this is just more of the same that we've seen from the United States, continuing down its traditional path of diplomacy by invasion and force. This should come as no surprise, though, to me, but it has taken a lot of companies off guard. I really don't know why, but I digress. The US has clearly communicated, though, repeatedly, that it will be overthrowing Venezuela and taking its oil. The US has also continued threats against Colombia, Mexico, and Cuba, to name a few, and of course my home country, Canada. But the most repeated threats have been the annexation and invasion of Canada, and more acutely, military force against Greenland, which the United States says it needs for its security. NATO has been silent on the issue, and the EU even more quiet. Why? Because the EU doesn't have the cards. It's a phrase we all know. You know what that means. They have no chance of putting up a fight against the US. Their focus has been to deplete their own weapons and at their own expense fight a losing proxy war against Russia on behalf of the United States. The EU does not treat their members as being equal, and the EU understands that all of their members are vassal states with no alternative power brokers. A lot of people won't like this statement. Again, if they weren't a vassal state, they wouldn't have to be part of the Five Eyes, and certainly the EU should be trying to defend Greenland and its member Denmark. They relied on one ally, though. This is the issue. They thought their one ally was always going to be the United States. They would sooner win the lotto than secure help from the only two forces they have been fighting for decades, namely Russia and China. You might recall I previously advised that companies move their data out of Europe, especially out of new NATO members that are intent on fighting a war of Russia they cannot win. But there is hope, and it's something that I've been talking about secretly for quite a while, and I've been calling it the best place in Europe for quite some time. This is Turkey, ironically a NATO member, but is physically connected to both Europe and Asia by land. Turkey is different from the EU and typical NATO country because it's consistently pursued its own domestic and foreign policies that suit its own interest, right? When you're looking at where you can trust and where you can place your data, you want to make sure that they have a stable, domestic and foreign policy that is sound, right? That has alternatives if things go wrong, and unlike, say, the EU. Turkey has a sizable military, which makes taking it by force so much more difficult than easier to invade countries like the rest of the EU or even Venezuela, right? The US goes after countries that are unprotected and that cannot defend themselves and have no allies to help them, right? So much like the UAE or the United Arab Emirates, Turkey has cleverly adopted this multipolar policy that we see many countries heading towards today, right, for their own protection. They have good relations with most neighboring countries, whether in the Gulf, the West, and especially with Russia and China. These are what keep countries safe today, especially in the world that we are in, right? Turkey has all the ingredients that your business needs to avoid the current and coming problems of the world. Turkey, on a technological level, surpasses the expectations of most, with large amounts of terrestrial fiber optics and undersea cables connecting to other parts of Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East as well. In terms of ping and latency, right, you're looking at maybe sub 60 milliseconds ping to most major European centers. Turkey also has world-class data centers, is self-reliant in terms of technology, and has a relaxed internet policy, especially compared to the EU. And in fact, many people are fleeing the EU even before these different world issues because of all the red tape and all these different policies they have, right, which Turkey doesn't have, right? So these factors have been driving so many capital and projects to Turkey, whether it's for the next data center project or AI. So what does it mean for your business? Even if you're not cutting edge, if you want a safe place to host your data in that region and applications, right, in the EU MENA area, Turkey is one of the best in my opinion. So we regularly advise our clients on how to build a Five Eyes prism-proof solution for their company and have helped many companies protect themselves and make their operations more efficient. Right? If you don't know what Five Eyes is, then you have to contact us right away, or at least ask me here. We can make a new video about it, but it's really critical, especially these days, to understand that. Turkey is vastly safer for your data than the EU. It can withstand US pressure and has multiple allies and its own strong military, whereas the EU has never been able to keep your data safe, let alone their own country safe. So what do you think? I think it's time for more companies to move their data out of these areas, which are what I would consider a hot zone. Turkey, in my opinion, is the new and better EU alternative for hosting, and is one that all companies should consider to keep themselves safe from US aggression. Guys, what do you think? Does your company, whether you own it or whether you're an employee there, do they have a plan to protect themselves from US dominance, guys? Anyway, it's been Areeb here. Thank you for listening, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.